All right, Rob. What? What'd you call me? No, that's out of line, mate. I don't mind having a joke, but that's out of line. Oh, too hot. Yeah, it is too hot, isn't it? Sorry, mate. Misunderstanding. It's bloody hot, though. Tell you what, these heat waves are really getting to me. Anyway, today I want to talk about something that's affecting most businesses. It's the P that too many marketers don't talk about, and it's pricing. So, I'm here to say today that you're probably too cheap for the problem you solve. And what I mean by that is you're not actually putting in the value of the outcomes. Most businesses kind of talk about the hours they put in or the platform or the licenses. It's all about inputs. And none of that actually relates to why someone should buy from you. It might relate to the problem they've got, but you're basically positioning yourself as a cost, and you're not giving yourself the opportunity to step out from kind of, the upworlds and the fivers of this world if all you're doing is talking about the inputs and the outputs rather than the outcomes. So I think where most of this starts is way back when businesses are kind of strategizing. They're looking at what their product is, they're looking at what their marketing is, but they're missing one question. And that question is, what expensive problem do we solve? Another way to think about it is, how expensive is this going to be if we don't solve the problem, if the problem doesn't remain solved? So it's not about what you do, it's not about how clever you are, it's about the business outcome of your target customer. What commercial pain do we reduce? How many days of CEO time do we take away by delivering this product or this service? How much risk and exposure do we take away by offering this product or this service? It's all about those outcomes. And the thing is, buyers don't pay for premium services just for the sake of it, but they pay for the certainty of premium services. That's why if we look down the high street, if we look at fashion, people pay for premium because they know what they're getting is less likely to be shit. And so if you position yourself as the most likely to deliver the better outcome, you've got much more chance of winning. Yeah, always nice to have a lorry go past, isn't it? So businesses often describe the work, not the value. So professional services talk about reports, they talk about strategy, they talk about outcomes, they talk about graphs. Tech firms talk about their dashboards or their kind of integrations of their workflows, which, fine, that might be what you see it as when you're stuck deep into it. But that's not the commercial question of what do we get as a customer. That's what do you do to get me there. What we should be doing is talking about kind of, what gets better if we buy into this, what improves for us, how do we make more money, how do we lose less time. So sometimes price can feel expensive, okay, and that's going to depend on perhaps what you're used to as well. I remember I worked with a sales guy who couldn't believe that we were going to be selling digital products for more than £100 because that's where he was used to being. He didn't last long. But again, if the buyer doesn't understand what the problem is costing them, they're not going to see the value in it. And there are a couple of examples there. If you've got a 50 grand service and it's going to solve a 60 grand problem, I mean, that's an expensive fix, right? But if you've got a 50 grand service that's saving 500 grand, that's the problem. That's value for money. That's a no-brainer. So again, you need to know your market and you need to have confidence in it. Because often price resistance is a positioning failure. You haven't set yourself up to win by talking about what you're going to deliver and why you're better. You haven't made the expensive problem clear, and you haven't shown the cost of doing nothing, which is hugely important. And so the buyer does the obvious thing. They ask for a discount. Why wouldn't they? They don't understand the value. So I have a bit of a mantra, which is, the cost is the cost. I have my day rate, my cost is my cost. If you can't afford that, let's look at what I can do for you within the time that you can afford. That's because I know that I'm going to make a business difference. And when I talk to potential clients, I talk to them about business outcomes, not campaigns. And so that makes a lot more kind of difference in terms of how I pitch to people. But the thing is, being cheap doesn't just reduce margin. And there's a stat out there that shows that just a 1% increase in price, 1% increase, has 3 times the impact of selling the same amount more units. Think about that. If you increase sales by 1%, you're doing 3 times less than increasing the price by 1%. What's a percent? How much is your day rate? How much is your hour rate? How much is your product price? And if you've got a strong enough positioning, then you're able to do that. It's when you kind of, it's when you don't have the position, when all you're doing is attracting cheap customers, because they've got nothing to judge you against. They've got no output to judge you against. And then you need more people to sort through, to work through at those cheaper price points. You can't afford to invest in quality yourself. The quality drops. Business starts to grow revenue, but all the revenue goes down the back of the sofa at the end of the day because you're scrabbling. I can get in the bin. Another thing to talk about is bad fit revenue. Sometimes a customer is bad and you need to say no. And that does come from a point of privilege, but it also comes from a point of having learnt the hard way. And again, some of that's down to positioning. So when the positioning is weak, the qualification is weak, you want a customer to see themselves in what you're offering. And if they don't see themselves, know that they're not for you. It's good to qualify people out because you're avoiding 6 months of just horrible relationship and then either you walking off or getting dumped. So let's talk a little bit now about what better looks like. And I'm going to check my notes here because these are important. So a stronger business does 5 things properly. It defines the expensive problem. It names the cost of inaction. It connects the offer to measurable commercial improvement. Really important. It qualifies harder. And it builds bulletproof around outcomes. Sorry, it builds proof around outcomes, not activity. Now that's how you earn pricing power. Not by just adding a random amount on, by being absolutely clear about what you're going to get from working with us, with me. You'll find that most of your competitors are not doing that. So let's talk about the pricing power test. 5 questions. What expensive problem do we solve? What does the problem cost the buyer if they ignore it? What commercial result improves when we fix it? Why are we a better choice than cheaper alternatives? And what proof do we have that makes the price feel sensible? That proof point is really important. It's kind of pretty much the same as the last thing I said, but this is a way of framing it yourself, okay? So, buyers don't pay premium prices because you work really hard on the proposal. They pay premium prices when they know that you're a safer bet, when they feel more comfortable that you're going to give them the outcome that they know they need. And if you describe yourself as a supplier of tasks or products, it's not going to work. You need to talk about the outcomes. Now, if you find yourself having to discount, you've already failed in your positioning. And being expensive isn't the problem. It's being expensive without being understood. It's without having that value. That's where you need to show. It's not on price, it's on value. That's how you should position always. So, this is where proper commercial leadership kind of earns its money. Not by making things look nice, not by making more activity, but by making the decision easier to make for the customer, by making them see themselves and the outcomes as a no-brainer. And of course there is such a thing as too expensive and too cheap. And there are the Van Westerdorf and various techniques you can do to survey that. But ultimately, you need to position yourself as the worthwhile solution, the value. And I've talked about this in previous things where, kind of Rory Sutherland talks about satisficing, where people don't necessarily go for the best option, they go for the least shit option. And if you position yourself as the least shit option, the outcome being what the outcome is, you're likely to win more. So, fact is, you're not too expensive. You're just too expensive for how you position yourself. Think about that. Think about the 1% increase in price. Value yourself. Make sure people value you. Unlike Rob over here, who just spends his time taking the piss out of me. He tried to get me a baby chair in the pub the other day. You're such a bitch.